Wem.
And I'm Lewis.
This is the Forest School Podcast.
Let's go! That's a big sit. I heard a thing the other day on the radio that said, did you know it's illegal to see your pet dog or cat do a big stretch without saying big stretch? Did you know that's a law?
I think you're right.
And then some people were saying that it's also the law if your partner does a big stretch.
Yeah.
They have to go, oh, big stretch.
Really? No, I don't think I do it for partners, just for animals. I was driving this morning and looking out the window, and I was remembering the episode where we described the landscape at the particular season, sort of time of year in Devon, and what it would look like.
Right.
And the best description was that it was bum and sticks.
Bum and sticks.
And I was like, what is it now? I was trying to think of the 2-word description.
Right now, like right today, because the summer has broken and we are in bit of a bog season. Thunderstorms are coming. And
cold and wind and rain. But there is an element of muck. There's definitely some muck spreading going on. So
okay.
Muck and it's green, but it's like overly green. It's just too much. It's not like that fresh spring kind of zing, exciting. It's sort of everything's a bit like... I've
been doing this for a while. No, it can't be over now.
It's not over. It's just heavy. It's like... And the forest is very dark. And I read a thing, someone said the other day, someone I follow was saying that she doesn't like going to the woods at this time of year because it's just a bit creepy. Because this canopy...
Because the canopy makes it darker.
Full. And it's so different to not being in the woods, where it's all like, it's summer, it's really light, it's light for a long time.
Yeah, true.
And the woods is just like dark all day. And it's getting to that time of year where the birds are thinking about stopping singing soon. And then it gets all like weird and spooky. And it does remind me of all those fairy tales where it's like, don't go in the woods. It's got that vibe. Yeah,
there's also something about, especially in our woods, because we've got a northwest facing woods. So... loads of ferns and bracken and that like primordial stuff. Yeah. But this year, I think I said to you the other day, didn't I? Yeah. So we've got like, what do you reckon, 7-foot bracken?
Yeah.
Some of it pushing 8 foot.
Yeah.
And like that then creates all these little walls that, or like big hedges that like in the winter, like part of the thing is, you can see really far. So you can see the like crap over there and the stuff that's over. And then now the ferns and the bracken are so high that you are like, I can see around me. And if you go down some of the paths, like we're cutting the paths back, like
the brambles and stuff
every week, 2 weeks.
It's got a completely different feel, hasn't it? It feels like you're kind of running through tunnels almost, especially if you imagine doing it at kid height. At some of our kids' heights with the bracken kind of arching over their heads.
Like any of those like fantasy films where the forest suddenly grows and starts to grow after people, like chase them, like the vines and stuff coming down. It's a bit like that. But yeah, it's... I was saying to you the other day that like I think we might end up having like the Aboriginal calendar has... the rainy season, the monsoon season, the windy season, that I think we could, in the next 10 years, have not just 4 distinct seasons, but here in the UK have, this is the thing now. We now have storm season. We have heat wave, then storm season.
Yeah.
Then, which would be interesting to, roll with.
Yeah. Yeah.
I heard a very pessimistic song the other day. I can't remember who was singing it, but the gist of the song was like, we're not making the earth inhabitable. Mm-hmm. We're just making it inhabitable for us. Which, I mean, also lots of other animals, but long term, it's be right. It's just us that's
other things
going.
Will suit whatever happens. Yeah.
Oh, we've already planned. This is the first time I think we've planned Patreon episode and main episode in tandem.
Yes. They complement one another.
Complement one another.
Yeah.
Look at that. So we're going to have a chat about a Peter Gray article, which I didn't write down the title of, but it's about
I did.
Mixed stage play.
It's literally mixed stage play, and it came out on the 4th of July, and it's the third in a series of letters he has written about mixed stage play. Mixed stage play is more playful when
Great.
it is age mixed.
Great.
Yes.
So we're going to chat about that, and then we thought, why don't we chat about the article and also how it relates to our own experiences and other things that we might want to throw into that mix that maybe weren't in the article. And then in the Patreon episode, we're going to be a bit more practitioner focused and talk about like, how do you do mixed age groups? What do you need to know if you're running them? What stuff might you need to put in place? Mm-hmm. So this one is going to be great for anyone to listen to because mixed stage play happens everywhere. Mm-hmm. And then the Patreon one is if you run mixed age groups or you're thinking about running mixed age groups, you can head and listen to that episode and then get all the tips and tricks.
Yeah.
Oh.
So this letter, it's specifically sort of about creativity, and he makes the point that it's like less competitive and more creative and more conducive to experimentation. And then he sort of goes into a little bit more detail and gives some examples of that. The only caveat I have, well, not maybe the only, but one of the caveats I have about reading this is that I think a lot of his observations are based on the Sudbury Valley School, this democratic school, famous democratic school, where kids who are aged 4 up to teenage are able to mingle with each other throughout the school day, he says. But he says his examples that he presents in this particular article come from research that he did years ago. He doesn't say how long ago, but that's just a little thing to kind of bear in mind. And I wonder if he did these kind of observations now, whether he would observe similar things or completely different things going on.
Well, also to acknowledge, I suppose, that is a potentially self-selecting group of learners, that this is not looking at, well, I suppose you can only do your research where you do your research, but to not have taken that from like groups of mixed age play that have been happening for years and groups that have been set up in the last 6 months, or group that have, they're very different in terms of, because a lot of what he's talking about in this is culture, is like the culture of a group, the culture of a place, and like it kind of talks about these things as if they're inevitable.
Yes, that's true. That just this will magically happen when you allow young children and older children to hang out. Whereas actually, that's very interesting. What about the setting, the environment, all the stuff
There's
that's
so
around
many other
them,
factors
the
going on.
attitudes of the adults towards it, the instructions that the children have been given about how to spend their time or not.
But I think, so like the point that he's done is about, it says joy and creativity, and he talks about it being like non-competitive, and that like the joy of playing is the overwhelming thing for most of the time, because he's talking about how there's no real kudos for someone who's older. So he sort of conflates this later on. I'll carry on. He says there's not very much kudos for an older person to beat, in air quotes there, a younger person
in a game.
And I'm guessing he means physical game there. And talking about how like, so what that leads to is then space for experimentation and space for like adaptation and self handicapping and all those things. He then later talks about how mixed age play means that people can pitch against their ability rather than their age.
Can we come back to that in a second?
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, we can come back to it, but I just think it's relevant to say that he is talking in two different ways here about mixed age play and mixed ability play, and they are not necessarily the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was interesting. He gave also an example of chess and saying, well, he gives quite a few examples of chess, but one of them he is saying it's an older player and a younger player. And as you just said, there's not necessarily much in it for the older player to completely thrash the younger or more inexperienced player. So, but there is an opportunity. And it was sort of, he describes it as giving opportunity for the younger person to learn how to play with the older person's sort of expertise, and they help them out and give advice and things. But that also the older players were using it as an opportunity to play in a new way and to try out new strategies and things without the risk that there would be against somebody who is the same age or same ability. And I think you can probably sort of use that as a metaphor for mixed age play of lots of different types of play, not just chess.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking about communication play, stuff that's happening in the mud kitchen, like trying out new ways of talking or new kind of characters that you're
new personalities, personality traits,
or new ways of kind of getting what you want, you know, negotiating or those kind of things. That if you started changing the way that you communicate with your peers, especially when you're a teenager, like, that's really risky, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. You can't come into school one day and be like, hey, my guys, my new name is Cool McSpuds.
Exactly.
And
although some people do try.
I wear a hat now, guys. I'm a hat person. We've all tried to do that as a teenager.
I once got as far as being halfway up the school drive with a fake fringe. Not like
a fake
I'd
fringe?
made my long hair. I'd like got a bit of it and kind of folded it over my forehead and like put a hairband over the top so it looked like I had a fringe. I was like, I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to do it and be like, hey guys, I've got a fringe now. And then I was like, what am I doing? Take it out quickly. Yeah, that was as far as I got with that.
Okay.
So it's not just about chess, and it's not just about situations where you can win or lose the game. It's about like losing face or credibility or your reputation or, you know, people knowing you in a certain way. And that if you are going, I'm playing with some 4 and 5 year olds, like, of course I'm going to try out this funny voice or, you know.
Thanks to everybody that's rating and reviewing on Spotify and iTunes. It really helps us to find new listeners and share what we're doing with more and more people. Yeah. Do you think there's something inherent that once you... So I guess what we're saying there is that if you're in a group of single or close-aged peers, particularly in a school system, that you are going to, even with all of the stuff that a practitioner could put in to be like, I'm not assessing you all as equal, I'm not doing this, I'm tailoring this and differentiating and all that stuff, that there is an underlying thing that just comes with our biology, that, you know, which psyche or something that is like, no, I'm 8, he's 8. If he can do something and I can't, then someone is assessing us as different. But that is inherent that once you are in a mixed group, people then, I'm guessing what I'm asking is like, do people immediately understand like, oh, I'm not being assessed alongside my peers because he's 12 and she's 9 and he's 4 and I'm 6, or do you think people enter mixed age settings with that same mentality of like, who's the best, who's got this, where's my niche, all this stuff, and then you have to unlearn or become comfortable with that notion of unlevel footing? Like, are you immediately like, oh great, well there's no expectations, or does it come with time?
Depends on the setting, I think, and Peter Gray kind of makes that point that in mainstream education at the moment it's becoming more and more competitive at a younger and younger age. So the whole culture and the environment is implicitly competitive and explicitly competitive for a lot of children. So if you're in that building with that teacher, and then one afternoon they go, oh, and now, you know, just all chill now and just experiment and do what you want because you're not being assessed and it's not a competition. Well, you can't just switch that.
Your attention is a competition. Yeah. Your feedback is a competition. My social standing is a competition.
Exactly. But I do also think that there's a thing of younger children being less self-aware, obviously at different ages and different for everybody, but less self-aware and less looking at each other and comparing themselves to other people their age group, which I think develops as a natural human thing as you become an older child and a teenager. So even without, so say you had like an amazing range of like free range children that weren't in a school, but they were all the same age. I still think that naturally there is a hyper awareness, because it's about belonging, isn't it? It's about tribes and belonging and finding your people and kind of going, okay, well, these people are behaving this way, so I better, to fit in with them and to have a shared experience, I can mimic that, or I can join in with that way of being. And that kind of naturally happens as children grow older. So I think even in a non-competitive environment, I think that naturally happens. Whereas, you know, you get an older child playing with some younger children, that isn't so much of a big deal for them at that time.
I'm not sure I agree.
Really?
Because, and this may just be because of, I'm reflecting that this may come from my own type of play workering, but, hello dog. How do you then equate that with, because I was going to say that the younger children they are not self-aware, but that they are not self-aware in the way that sometimes they don't know that the other person has handicapped themselves. Mm-hmm. My daughter thinks she beats me in wrestling. She also thinks she beats me to the car. She also thinks, like, I'm my son, like, and so my son is 6, and he is starting to clock on that, like, this is a game. You're letting me do this, or you can actually do whatever. But my daughter is still in that world, and I was going to say that they're younger, they're less self-aware. At that age, I'm talking early years now, that there is like that, yes, I beat that person and I did the thing. And the mixed age play part of that is an older person has no chips at stake to go, you beat me. Yeah. Oh, so they're less competitive because the older child in that scenario is being less competitive in a mixed age scenario.
Yeah.
And the younger person is being more competitive, potentially in a mixed age scenario. Do you know what I mean? I understand that in a group of similar age peers, that thing goes up and up and up.
Yeah, I guess I wasn't necessarily talking about competition. I don't know. But if your daughter was racing somebody who would your daughter even have a race with somebody her own age and care about winning or losing? It probably wouldn't even occur to them.
Somebody her own age. And that is something,
because that's what Peter Gray is saying, that younger children are naturally less competitive. So that type of play probably wouldn't occur to her unless she's seen it modelled by you loads of times.
But, well, this
and
is
that's
where...
what's fun for her. The thing that's fun for her is that you've suggested race to the car, or she suggested it because you've suggested it before. And... oh my gosh, the novelty of beating you and feeling some like, whoa.
Okay, so there's a bigger question there then, which is like, is competition inherent or is it taught? Because I've seen, like, you know, after school club, do whatever, sports clubs, and I know sports clubs have an element of competition just by being sports clubs, but if you tell a group of young children, okay, let's warm up, let's head, we're going to run to the other side of the hall and then come back. Whoever's first will tell you that they were first and second and third. Even if you as the leader don't get involved in that and don't go, it's a race, they will run amongst a group of peers. And then I would say there's a high likelihood that the first couple of people, or some people in that group, will run back and go, first, I was first. No, I was first. And like, does that come from the fact that, like we're saying, the rest of their environment is competitive in terms of grades and marking and assessment and whatever else? So they found an outlook. You've told
them to do it.
But if you don't say it, but
you've said, run there and run back.
Okay.
And so you, the adult, the power, the authority, the knowledge, have said, I'm watching you do this. Do a thing that I've told you to do and I'll watch you. And they've gone, like me best because I'm the first and I'm the bestest and you told me to do something and I did it the best. In the same way as, you know, craptivities, in the same way as now everybody, we're going to make this wood cookie into a reindeer face and it's got to look like it. This is one I made earlier. Look, do you like mine? Do you like mine? Look at mine. Look at mine.
Yeah, that is a very good point. And I suppose I was getting drifted into non-play.
But it's interesting. It's very interesting. I would love to know if you did that, and it was the adult kind of saying, run there and run back. Do all age groups do that? Or is there an age that does start? But then it's not really about competition then, as I'm saying. It's more about, like, I'm aware of the teacher having power and authority, and I can, if they like me better, then it's better for me.
Go on.
I wrote down a bit from this article which said that if you're playing in a mixed age group, then there is overall a more playful mood and a less serious mood. And I wrote down, a playful mood facilitates creativity and experimentation, while a serious mood inhibits this and leads people to fall back on skills that are already well learned. And I thought that is an interesting statement, because if we're thinking about a kind of forest school style education and thinking specifically about learning and learning through play, then it is about experimenting and taking risks and doing new things rather than
that nouvophilia thing.
Yeah, or just that is learning, isn't it? Learning is going, I'm going to try something new. Either because I've seen someone else do it, or because just this spirit of play is in me and I'm just mucking around, I'm playing, I'm experimenting. And again, that you might not necessarily feel comfortable or inspired to do that in your own peer group. And he goes on later to say that some things are really useful to do in your peer group, which we'll move on to that thing about ability in a bit maybe. But that he's observed this kind of playful mood or serious mood, and it's not to say that the serious mood is bad, and it's useful in some cases, but if you want that kind of community of learning and that kind of feeling of safety, feeling of comfort, that it's okay to try something, it's okay to fail at something, it's okay to just do something for the sake of doing it, just like out of a spirit of joy, I'm going to do a headstand against this tree, which I did the other day, and it was very joyful. Like, I wouldn't have done that if I was working in an office. I wouldn't have done that probably if I was working outdoors with just a group of adults where we were, I don't know, where we were having a break in between doing a woodland survey. Like, I probably wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
I did it because of the playful, experimental mood. And hello, cat. And it turned out it was exactly what I needed to do in that moment. It was really great.
But so are you saying that it was open to you because you felt you had no social stakes?
Yes.
I wasn't asking you, Kat.
I guess he's trying to say, isn't he, that having a mixed age group creates a playful vibe with all the connotations of that word playful, that it is experimental and free and anything goes. And it's about that thing that we always say is that, you can do whatever you want as long as it's not hurting yourself or other people or the environment.
Yeah.
And that message is somehow easier to get across in a mixed age group, probably because when people are free to do whatever they want, the results of that are going to look so much more different when you've got some 5-year-olds and some 12-year-olds. Yeah. So to say, do whatever you want in this safe place with some resources and some help, some 12-year-olds are going to do something a lot,
Yeah.
Some might choose to do the same thing as 5-year-olds, but you're going to have such a variety of behaviours and games and little making things or whatever on display that then it kind of makes you feel like, because we are a species that does learn by mimicry and does learn by observation. And so to look at another person who is very different to you in terms of age or ability and look at what they're doing, go, oh, I might actually try that. Like he gives the example of most teenagers kind of growing out of creative play with clay and things like that. Yeah. And it declines, that creative play declines, but then he says they can't resist joining in, playing with clay, for example, if they observe younger children doing it. And that is very true. And I think that's true for us as adults as well, that, if some kids are playing with some clay or tinkering or whatever, that you just can't resist it. You just have a little go. And how joyful is that? So healthy. And he kind of makes a point that he thinks that a lot of graduates from this Sudbury Valley School go on to become artists or have a career in the arts. And his theory is that it is down to that it's that you continue to play creatively for a longer period of time. And I mean, that I can see why he would think that, because if you're in a mainstream education setting, your opportunities for creative play become narrower and narrower and smaller the older you get, both in school and out of school probably. And that even if you are being creative, that it's a little bit more like, we're learning how to do this thing today, as opposed to we're just mucking around and seeing what happens.
You will never need to go back to mundane marshmallows ever again. My book, Forest School Cooking, covers everything from how to build ovens to cooking in new and exciting ways, and a whole load of easy and amazing recipes that your groups will love. Order your copy today on Amazon. Yeah. I think there's something interesting, which I said to you when we were reading this, that my brain pulls out like, but what about? And I think it's worth, I really wish there was some equal sort of observations in this piece about how sibling mixed age play works. Ooh. And the different way that works.
Oh
because
my gosh, that could be a whole podcast about sibling play.
But and it will be, but
sorry. Yes.
But don't you think that's interesting? Because sibling, that's why I was kind of asking about, like, right at the start, about, like, do you have to learn this mixed age play to get what Peter Gray is talking about from here? Is this a cultural thing that you have to set up over years and years and years and years? And is that why some siblings do this type of play? This, like, hey, we're all together and I'm learning from the older ones and whatever else. Some siblings do not do this, like, joyful, non-competitive type of play ever, right? Some siblings, go completely the opposite way, where everything they do is competition, even though you might argue from a, like, purely, like, Vulcan logical thing, you would be like, that your sibling is 4 years younger than you, in the same way that someone else is a group younger than you. You know that your sibling cannot do X task as well as you because you spend every day with them or every moment. So in the same way that you could go, if it's inherent that when you're in mixed age settings, it becomes non-competitive. Why? And I know the answer to this, but the question would be, why are siblings ever competitive if they are constantly in a mixed age thing?
Well, you just said the answer to it. What do you think the answer is? Well,
I think the answer is that a lot of sibling interactions are, as I was describing earlier and you rightly called me out on, not play. They are, scenarios where parental attention is limited, or where financial or physical resources are limited, or where, like, there's an underlying current of, like, scarcity maybe of something or another, and so that you don't just shake that off.
And a lot of baggage that goes on. It's like you've been together probably for a lot more time than you have with other children, and so you remember that this thing happened at breakfast, or
got a lot more grievances to carry with you.
Yes, you have. Even some people, just the fact that their sibling's been born is a grievance that they can never get over. It's true.
I mean, yeah.
It's true. For some people, it's such a massive kind of betrayal or life
world shift. It's a world shift, isn't it?
They never get over it. And that's sad.
But we're both oldest siblings, so of course we both believe that our younger siblings are.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And I was reminded while you were talking about also, when you can, like, do amazing work with kids that aren't produced by you. You're like, I'm great at this job, and then you, like, have to have an interaction that's kind of similar situation with your own offspring, and then you just, like, go,
you sit back afterwards and go, yeah, fuck that one, didn't
exactly.
I? Absolutely.
How come I couldn't regulate my emotions, be completely, give them what they needed in the moment, not be judgmental, take the time, breathe, all of that stuff.
But this leads me on to an interesting point that I made, and Peter Gray talks briefly about it in this, which is that he talks about the skills that you get from mixed age play and how he briefly mentions extreme mixed age play. Did you get to that little bit at the bottom? Yeah. Which he describes as parent and child, adult and child play. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about, like, why is that interesting? What makes that particularly different? And I think I'd be really interested to know whether people who spend more time in mixed age settings and are So one of the things we've been talking round and round and round about is this idea that like people will acknowledge that they are self-handicapping, or they will acknowledge that they are giving the other person an advantage in that because they don't have the social stakes in the same way, they're more comfortable going, well, 2 of you is worth 1 of me, or we need 4 people on our team because you're so much better at the game, or can we have 2 turns every time you get 1 turn?
Yeah.
That sort of like...
The target is closer for us.
The target is closer for us.
Yeah.
All that like self-learning that has no competitive baggage. Right. And I was wondering about whether children, particularly young children who are exposed to that, then create better play with their parents because they can offer better suggestions about how the adult needs to handicap themselves to make it fun.
Yeah.
When you play, so lots of times when I have done work in schools or work in holiday clubs or work broadly, work with children who are not used to mixed age play, their first instinct is that I as the adult should play how they are playing. And maybe down the line, they will look at like they almost don't want to acknowledge the handicap, right? They want to go like, you get 3 balls to kick it at the goal, I get 3 balls to kick it at the goal, and it's only if you do that 3 or 4 times and you destroy them that they then will go either don't want to play anymore, you've annihilated a play cycle, you know, or then they might start to go, well, you only get 2 now, right? But it takes a little while to get there. Whereas the children that I've worked with who are have more experiences in mixed age play arrive at the game with more stuff to start my handicaps. I'm now just talking about like personal experiences where they won't start with like you get 4 and I get 4. They will start with like, okay, here's how I want to do it, and like my own kids, and then. Also, I guess this is a culture thing that we have, which is like talking about if something isn't fun for you and starting that cultural thing of like suggesting like, oh, can I do it with 1 hand? Can I do this thing? So that they've then got those things in their locker to offer you back in the future that are like, you know, do X, do Y, do Z, and how that then leads to. So I'm thinking about this. There's a person that I go to like a weekend club with my son, and there's always a bit of milling around 10 minutes beforehand or whatever, and it's a parent and child thing. So the parents are involved, and I'm really interested in. There's this other kid who always sets up absolutely batshit games, right? So he's there going like, you're all pizza rolls and we're the helicopters and we're going to run past and you have to try and catch us, and that's called level 1 unlocked, we're the Beastmasters, and then you have absolute fucking nuts, right? But then you peel it down and you go, oh, okay, this is Bulldog, right? This is you want to run from here to here, and you've just coated it in all these different cultural references you've got, right? And normally this kid will insist that his dad plays, or that all the dads play. You're trying to stop us getting from here. And he will take 2 steps and then go, and also this is home. Yeah. And also this is thing. And then what's really interesting is his dad can't take it. His dad then goes, whoa, you can't change the rules. Well, no, because we're trying to play this thing, aren't we? And the kids go, actually, now you're only allowed on green. Yeah. And the dad's going, well, no, you just said I was on blue. Like he can't. Yeah. He is sort of rolling with it. Yeah. But he is also kind of going, you can't keep changing the rules on me. And I find it really interesting because I want to obviously be like, this is really interesting. Your child's engaging in rule-based social play. That's quite interesting, isn't it? That's what they're playing is changing the rules. And they don't actually care about the running bit. They care about, will you follow this and what will you do? But the dad never sort of acknowledges, this isn't fun for me, or I can't win if I do that. He just says, you're changing the rules. Yeah. And that's his grievance, is that you're...
Without an explanation about why that might be a problem for him.
Right. And then I was thinking about, like, with this mixed age play thing, that especially, you combine mixed age play with self-directed education, and they sound like they're implicitly together, but they're not, right? You could have a mixed age group of children who have to run football drills, or a mixed age group of children who are at chess club, right? It's not implicit that those things go hand in hand, but there's something about doing mixed age play in a scenario where older learners can just go, nah, and walk off.
I'm going to leave
And
now.
so both...
Or younger.
Or young people. Everybody involved is in a bartering scenario of, how do I make this fun for you? Because if I stop making this fun, you're not like... The year sixes have been sent down to be buddies for the year ones today, and so they have to do whatever. Like, that year six can't leave. Or I'm not your older sibling who has to look after you. Like, you were in a very, we talked about this in the last Peter Gray, one of the Peter Gray episodes, about it being democratic, and that you can just leave. You vote with your feet.
Yeah.
But you are building that skill of, how do I make this fun for you? And also communicating that, like, that probably won't be fun for me if you are too good, or if I, just beat you. So can we try this? Can we try this? And like, that skill is definitely a muscle you have to build.
Absolutely. Completely. And especially for the older kids, like, it's interesting to examine what their motivation for playing with the younger kids is in the first place. So is it just because they actually do find the game fun, or does it sometimes merge into, actually, this, like, the game part is really boring for me and it's not fun, and the rules are such that I'm not in any way challenged or having a great time, but I acknowledge that you, young child, are really enjoying playing this game, and you can only really play it if I'm with you. And I've just got, which is kind of like merging into that caring role, as opposed to we are both playing a game, and an opportunity to just kind of go, but I'm like helping you out and I'm looking after you, and I'm just going to put your needs a little bit ahead of mine for a period of time until I get bored of that and it's too much for me right now, because after all I am still a child, and I'm going to stop it, or
it feels nice to help people.
Exactly.
And I am getting something because I feel good about myself for having helped.
And I am more self-aware than you right now, and I'm aware of your needs versus mine. I think it kind of goes a little bit beyond like being kind, and more about like acknowledging the sort of increased capacity that you have as an older child, and go, right, I can do this. And
presumably you mean acknowledging it internally. You don't mean saying out loud, like, no. I don't really want to play that, but I would, like, you're talking about this being an internal reflection.
I have actually seen that.
Sure.
Quite often, in fact.
Go on.
I've quite often heard older children say to younger children, this isn't really what I want to do, but you're only quite small, so sure. I've seen that, and like, especially those with siblings, it's like kind of almost going like, this is kind of like when my baby sister like steals my stuff, and that is kind of annoying, but I guess it's similar because you're also quite young, and my parents usually tell me this, and this is what I do. This is my strategy for my siblings, so I'm going to try that out with you. I have literally heard kids like work through those kind of scenarios, and like, or when my brother and me have this problem at home, we do this, or that kind of thing, which is that kind of integration of like home and family learning, and learning in the woods, and testing it out, and like, does this strategy still work in this kind of mixed age play where we're not related and there are a few, the structures are different. I just think that's like, that's brain exploding actually when you think about it.
It is. And also now that you've said about like motivations and that being the like, sorry, there's a weird hand gesture to make towards you. I sort of did a weird claw. The idea is here in the middle, and I'm just reaching out to grab it.
Pull the thread of yarn.
Pull the thread of yarn.
Unravel it.
Don't give me visual metaphors. Now that's all that's in my head.
Okay.
Um,
Motivation.
Yes. So that is a I think undeniably, I'm going to say good motivation, which is like, it is good that I feel good when I help someone, therefore I will help someone. You know, that's intrinsic motivation. Mm-hmm. But there is also, and I have seen examples of this, I wonder whether you would still call it peer pressure. Mixed aged peer pressure. Mixed age peer pressure in a really interesting way, because we're talking about there not being social stakes in the same way, but there are social stakes in the same way if some of the group, not necessarily older or younger Applications for Forest School leader training at Children of the Forest are now open. Come and learn with me and Wem at our private woodland down in Devon. Find out more by heading to myforestschooltraining.co.uk. See you there. No, I'm going to catch myself on that thing. The examples that I have, and I think you may have different examples of this, but if there is an amount of people who are older than you who feel like your actions are not in line with the group, with the community's ethos, that there is a different kind of peer pressure that is more, it almost fits more into a mentoring box than a peer pressure box, is I think how I see it. I think peer pressure would be that, like, everyone in the, I don't know, it goes to the school example, but like everyone in year 4 on the playground is doing this thing. Go on, do that thing. Or that positive peer pressure thing of we're doing it. There have been examples in the woods where someone has made a social misstep by the values of the group. They have done a thing, and the group then sort of coming together and going, we're actually going to go and talk to you about that and express that we don't like you doing that, and that we are going to make sure that you don't do that again, because and some but not all of the examples I can think of are when someone older is potentially taking advantage of someone younger, or someone with high,
or not handicapping themselves. Basically, that's what I mean. I think it's like, go on. From what I'm hearing, it sounds like occasions of where either because of somebody being in the group longer, having more experience of this mixed age play and how it works successfully in terms of like handicapping or concessions that you might make. Yeah. And somebody hasn't done that so much or isn't able to do that for whatever reason.
True.
You know?
Yeah.
And therefore doesn't make as many concessions as other people might do. And doesn't quite yet have that ability or inclination to go, oh, okay, they're smaller, younger, perhaps more emotionally vulnerable in this situation. Therefore, I won't try my absolute best to completely beat them at this game. And then the rest of the group kind of, tries to restore that situation by going, oh, actually, that wasn't necessarily fair. Or what we usually do is this, and you didn't do that. And we want to make sure that these people are okay. And I think, again, that is sort of like, obviously, as practitioners, we've got to be really sensitive to moments like that to make sure that, just in the same way as we would make sure that a younger, more vulnerable person isn't upset or overwhelmed by any type of play in a way that is really sad and hurtful for them. Yeah. We also need to make sure that somebody who isn't able to make the concession, because it is challenging, like all these things we're describing are like literally almost, you can hear brains growing, you know. Do you know what I mean? It's like that, as I said earlier, that is what learning is. And if somebody isn't quite there yet, you know, if there's the potential for them to be looked down on by the rest of the group because they're not there yet, then that's a situation for us to be really aware of and go, right, you know, we need to look after them too, you know. And I don't think it's ever got to the point where a group has been really horrible to a person who hasn't quite been there yet, but it's just about kind of I think that is an other Peter Gray episode as well that we did about democratic play too, that it kind of, that the community kind of becomes, like, I want to say self-policing, but that has really negative connotations.
Yeah.
That it's like the values of the group have become so intrinsic that...
Could you say self-protecting?
Yeah.
Is that a better term than policing? Because I don't think I know what you mean,
Yeah.
and I agree that it's not policing in terms of that way of like we do things this way. It is like emotional security or physical security in a like we do these things to stand with it. It's interesting you say about self-handicapping, because I think that's really interesting to imagine from a fit, because I think you can divide this stuff broadly into like physical stuff, physical mixed age play, it's social and emotional mixed age play, and I want to say like academic mixed age cerebral mixed age play, right? And there's that thing of like the physical mixed age play. If somebody is not doing their bit to self-handicap, that's very easy to get for a group of children to self-secure and go, whoa, you need to do this thing, or like we need an extra throw, or we need another stick in our whatever. The academic cerebral bit of it is much more interesting to me, at least, in terms of like, how does that self-securing work? Because you can't see it, but they do know it's happening. And I've seen groups of learners who, in the nicest way possible, without putting anyone down, if you were going to use horrible terms, right, the conversation would go along the lines of like, you have taken advantage of that person because they are less cerebral than you. Or in the social and emotional context, you might get like, you have gone full throttle verbal hell for leather on this person, and we don't do that because they're 5. And, you know, the group will sort of lobby back and go like, well, I'm going to stay in the same way that you and I might go, well, I'm just going to stand next to this person that needs some support now to just check that they're all right. Or the group might go, come on, you come play with us, or like, you come do this thing. The academic cerebral bit of this is really interesting, that nobody loses face in the same way that you're not going, hey, that person's thick and you've done a like bad thing because you've eaten all their lunch, you knobhead. Because that would make the one person. You did
that to me last week.
Huh?
Nothing.
Yeah, well, you should be so thick. But do you know what I mean? That can be devastating. And that's quite often, I think, where a lot of teachers get stuck, is trying to explain that to somebody in a way where you're not going, look, little Billy doesn't have his shit together. Right? He's not online yet. Have you seen him? There's dribble coming out of him all the time. Loves the window. Right? Loves the window. Right. Because that would make Billy feel rubbish. You can't involve that thing in the conversation. So I've lost you now, haven't I? You're just a little giggling board.
Yeah.
But a self-securing group can navigate that in a way that protects everyone's ego, protects everyone's like self-esteem, doesn't make anyone feel bad, in a way that top down I don't think you can do.
Yeah, and it's like watching a shoal of fish change direction all together, and maybe sometimes it will split and then come back together and that kind of thing. So even if you have these moments of like, oh, I'm not sure about that actually, let's just have a little chat, and that, as you know, and then it's sort of forgotten in our groups anyway. There's very little in terms of, you know, obviously we don't know what's happening inside people, and you just don't know that. But what it looks like on the surface is often, even in moments of like disagreement, or what do you call it, self-securing, self-protection,
that's the word I've made up,
or confrontations, that even after, you know, not long after that, you'll see the same people who are involved in that playing something completely different and being completely at ease with each other. And obviously that kind of community doesn't happen overnight, and that is based on real long-term relationships and knowledge of one another and security and safety, and knowing that if you do make a mistake, in inverted commas, or that you're corrected by the group, that you'll still be accepted, soon after.
Yeah.
Which I think, and again, going back to this Peter Gray thing, if he was observing mixed stage play in groups which had only known each other for a week, what would that look like? Would that look in any way how he's describing?
No, or
is it about, like, again, that is part of the learning, is like getting to know each other's interests and abilities because of their age, as well as interests and abilities and preferences and everything because of just who they are, and that almost age goes out the window in some cases, because, again, we didn't really touch on this thing that Peter Gray says about finding your own peers due to skill levels as opposed to age. So he gives the example of a younger person who was very interesting and very able at chess. And so in order to actually find their peer on a skill level, they had to play against people who were sort of 17 or 18 to actually feel that challenge and to be able to progress and feel like they were not always self-handicapping in order to have a great game. That there's something about, it's almost like the title of this should be like mixed age and ability play, as opposed to just mixed age. Because part of, it's almost like the long-term nature of it is almost the most important thing, and getting to know each other, because in that way, everyone who's playing gets to know people's different levels of ability and different preferences and different emotional levels at things, So it's less about age and more just about people. It's more just about, well, we are all humans right now, and we all know that so-and-so finds it really difficult when this happens. They get very emotional about it. That's not anything to do with age. That's just them. And we've learned that about them. And therefore, and you, newcomer or person who isn't quite as aware of other people's emotions, might not have got that yet. So let us tell you that actually the reason that they are really upset right now is because that's one, almost like that is one of their, what does Alice Sheldon call it?
Fingerprint needs.
Yeah. So it's kind of,
I think, just to bring it to like pull all these threads together, then I think what we are saying is that there are massive benefits to long-term mixed age self-directed play. Well, no, because it's play, so it doesn't have to be. So long-term, the components that pull it together are long-term and self-directed. And when you bring those together, that's when this amazing learning can happen. Yeah. Shall we, because we've waffled on this and I keep going, I need to tell people that they should do this. I need to tell people how to put this together. Should we jump straight in? Yes. I will first of all though, I'll thank Rosie and Julie and Rachel and Emma and Candice and Sarah and Claire and Heidi, Louise and Michael and Anna for supporting us on Patreon. We will see all of you guys in the Patreon bonus episode.
Yes.
See you in a bit.
And if you want to join, it's not too late.
It's not too late. You can go see the episode.
You can join.
You can listen.
And you can listen to all of the previous.
And you get to listen to the stuff without adverts, and you get bonus stuff. It's great. Do it. It's at patreon.com/Children of the Forest. See ya.
Bye.